It's January 20th, 2020, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them up. Number 1, armed right-wing extremists rally in capital of Virginia. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Facepalm 5. We're going to get right to it. Thousands of gun rights activists converged in Richmond, Virginia today. And hey, guess what? They brought their guns. Oh, great. The rally was organized in response to promises by the Democratic governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, and the democratically controlled state legislature. The Democrats control both houses of the Virginia state legislature, so it's sort of strike while the iron is hot time as far as gun control regulations. They have proposed a series of new gun control laws that they mean to enact this year. The proposed gun control measures include bans on military-style assault weapons, a red flag law that will enable law enforcement to temporarily confiscate guns from people deemed a threat, and a law that will limit handgun purchases to 1 per month. 1 handgun a month! Who can live on such meager provision? Tyranny, I tells ya! Hark! Tyranny, says I! Sorry, I just saw The Lighthouse. I may have Willem Dafoe'd a bit. So, the government of Virginia proposed a series of modest, sensible gun control regulations, and these thousands of firearm fetishists responded by forming a mob and descending upon Richmond in force, brandishing their guns. Hey, can anyone explain to me how that doesn't perfectly demonstrate the urgent need for more gun control? You assholes react to new gun laws by grabbing your guns and hitting the streets to try and intimidate people into not passing the new gun laws. Do you see how you might be hurting your own case here? Oh, and in case you're wondering what the President of the United States has to say about this rally of armed extremists taking place in an American state capital, there's a tweet. There's always a tweet. Here's the tweet from the President of the United States. This was posted on January 17th. It reads, "Your Second Amendment is under very serious attack in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. That's what happens when you vote for Democrats. They will take your guns away." So, yeah. We don't need the music. That's what the president does in response to, and by the way, that tweet was posted a couple of days after Governor Northam declared a state of emergency in Virginia as a result of law enforcement identifying credible threats of violence associated with the rally. So what you have there is the President of the United States inciting a mob of armed terrorists. And then, after Trump tweeted that one, just today, this very day, the day of the rally, he tweeted this: "The Democrat Party in the great Commonwealth of Virginia are working hard to take away your Second Amendment rights. This is just the beginning." So, state of emergency, credible threats, armed mob, Trump sides with and encourages and validates the fears of the mob. It's just another day in the United States of America, I guess. Happy Martin Luther King Day, everybody, by the way. Number 2, documents reveal that Trump associates were stalking ambassador to Ukraine. So, we already know that former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, has been mistreated by Donald Trump and utterly failed by Mike Pompeo, who was her boss at the State Department. I think he still is her boss at the State Department. She still works with the State Department. She just has a different post now. And he basically just sat around with his thumb up his ass while the president of the United States bullied and insulted and eventually fired Ambassador Yovanovitch. But last week, documents released by the House Intelligence Committee revealed that several associates of Trump and Rudy Giuliani were keeping Yovanovitch under surveillance and might even have been setting her up for a hit. Yeah, there goes the ambulance. Can you hear the ambulance? Bye, ambulance. Good luck. So last week, the House Intelligence Committee released new documents, including a series of text messages provided to them by Lev Parnas, who is or was an associate of Rudy Giuliani, who is the personal attorney of Donald Trump, the president of the United States. Parnas was arrested last year on charges related to the ongoing Trump-Ukraine scandal. And the messages that the Intelligence Committee released were exchanged between Lev Parnas and a Republican congressional candidate and Trump supporter named Robert Hyde last year. And in these messages, Hyde claimed to have been in touch with a private security team in Ukraine that was following Ambassador Yovanovitch's movements. And at one point, he says to Parnas, quote, "They are willing to help," they meaning his private security team, "they are willing to help if we/you would like a price. Guess you can do anything in the Ukraine with money. What I was told." That sounds totally innocent and not at all menacing, right? In interviews following the release of the documents, Parnas claimed that he never took Hyde's messages seriously, and he doesn't think Yovanovitch was ever in any real danger, though he did also apologize to Yovanovitch for his part in the campaign to discredit and remove her from her post. Now, whether Hyde was serious or not, the notion that an American ambassador was being followed by private security working with associates of the president is pretty disturbing, especially in light of Trump's conversation with Ukrainian President Zelensky in July, when Trump referred to Yovanovitch, who was the sitting ambassador of the United States to Ukraine at that time, as bad news, and said she was, quote, going to go through some things. The comparison of Trump and his associates to a mafia family is probably getting a little tiresome by this point, but you know what else is getting kind of tiresome? Trump and his associates acting like a mafia family. Number 3, Texas rejects new refugees. So, week before last, Greg Abbott, who is the Republican governor of Texas, informed the U.S. State Department that Texas would not be accepting any new refugees in fiscal year 2020. Surprisingly enough, given its long-standing status as a red state, over the last 20 years, Texas has taken in more refugees than any U.S. state but California. Though it actually shouldn't be surprising if we think about it a little. Yes, racism and xenophobia are staples of right-wing politics, but on the other hand, refugees have been shown time and time again to be an economic benefit to communities that welcome them. And if there's anything that conservatives might hold dearer than their prejudice, it's their money. Governor Abbott's refusal to accept new refugees follows an executive order last year from Trump that essentially leaves it up to individual states whether or not they allow refugees to resettle within their jurisdictions. It's also in line with Abbott's past anti-refugee positions. In 2015, he insisted that Texas would not welcome refugees from Syria because that's the sort of man Governor Greg Abbott is. At the same time, at the time, it wasn't up to him to decide how many refugees Texas accepted or didn't. It was up to the federal government, and Texas continued to accept refugees from Syria and various other countries, despite Abbott going out of his way to publicly make them feel as unwelcome as possible. Now, thanks to Trump and his executive order, it is up to Abbott, and Abbott is shutting the door to new refugees. The good news is Texas is the first and so far only state to take advantage of Trump's executive order to deny refugee resettlement. 42 states have affirmed that they will continue to accept refugees, and the 7 other states have not yet announced whether they will or won't. And just in case you're curious, 6 of those 7 states do have Republican governors. So who knows what they will say, but Fingers crossed for new refugees who are looking for a home here in the United States. Number 4, 1 million moms protests Burger King ad. So 1 Million Moms, an organization created by the far-right fundamentalist Christian hate group, the American Family Association, has targeted Burger King for a new commercial for the company's popular plant-based Impossible Whopper. That 1 Million Moms, which I should note has never had anywhere near 1 million members, would raise such an objection isn't surprising. This is the same group, after all, that has previously protested Ellen DeGeneres being hired as a spokesperson for JCPenney because Ellen DeGeneres is gay. In fact, I believe that was the quote-unquote controversy that inspired 1 Million Moms to be founded. So they protested that. They've protested superhero comics featuring gay characters. And just a couple months ago, they protested a commercial for an online wedding registry that aired on the Hallmark Channel. They protested that because it featured a same-sex couple. Are we beginning to see a pattern? So, given the group's track record of open, shameless bigotry against LGBTQ people, you might assume that far less than 1 Million Moms has a problem with the Impossible Whopper because they heard it contains estrogen, or one of the other utterly unhinged conspiracy theories that have sprung up around meat substitutes due to right-wing meat eaters panicking at the thought of someone somewhere not eating meat. So just in case it's not clear, the estrogen stuff is complete bullshit. There's all kinds of just absolutely outrageous conspiracy theories that have cropped up about Impossible Burgers and Beyond Burgers and all kinds of meatless meat substitutes. But see, that's the fun part of this story. The probably not even that many moms protest of this Burger King commercial has nothing to do with the nutritional value or lack thereof of the Impossible Whopper itself. No. And nor does it have anything to do with the many secret sexuality warping chemicals it no doubt contains. No! Their problem with the ad is that it uses offensive language. For shame, Impossible Whopper. For shame, Burger King. So I'm just going to allow this this commercial, or this 1 Million Moms protest, to speak for itself. This is from the 1 Million Moms website right here. There you go. There's the Impossible Whopper. The offending Impossible Whopper is there. And here's the problem. In the Burger King commercial that is currently airing on TV, customers' responses are being videoed as they taste test the Impossible Whopper. One man is completely shocked that the burger is not beef, so he uses the D word to describe how he feels about himself for being deceived by the taste of the burger. The D word would be damn, by the way, mildest of the mild curses. 1 Million Moms continues, 1 Million Moms finds this highly inappropriate. When responding to the taste test, he didn't have to curse. Or if, in fact, it was a real and unscripted interview in which the man was not an actor, then Burger King could have simply chosen to edit the profanity out of the commercial. That's it. Seriously, that's what they're upset about. And it's clearly struck a chord with the group's membership because, as you can see, over 11,000 people have taken action, have signed this petition to stop Burger King from airing this grossly offensive ad. 1 million moms, and they've mobilized their vast membership. 11,000 people, and by take action, of course, they mean sign this petition to urge Burger King to cancel this Impossible Whopper commercial, or, at the very least, edit out the cuss word immediately. Are there no standards? Is there no shame anymore in this country that we cannot even trust our Impossible Whoppers and our fast food giants to air commercials that are not filled with grotesque, awful profanity? Isn't that, it makes your heart hurt, doesn't it? It really makes your heart hurt. Anyway, now it's time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's time for number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. So besides inciting thousands of armed right-wing extremists as they march on a state capitol in a show of force to oppose sensible gun regulations, here's what else Trump has done lately. He's been taking credit for a lot of stuff that he had nothing to do with. For example, there's a tweet here that I will show you in a moment. This one right here, that where Trump is touting the low cancer death rate in the U.S. And he follows that up with, quote, a lot of good news coming out of this administration, as though him being president is somehow the cause of fewer people dying of cancer. And then after that, he also tweets this. This is from January 9th. Stock market at all-time high. How are your 401ks doing? 70%? 80%? 90% up? Only 50% up? What are you doing wrong? Now, by the way, that is the second tweet that Trump tweeted about that. The first time he tweeted it, there was actually a typo. He tweeted a 409K instead of 401K. He deleted that to get rid of the typo and then posted this version. But luckily, the internet never forgets. So here's the original Donald Trump tweet about 409Ks. So here's the story behind that, because there is a little bit more going on besides Trump just emptily boasting as he usually does. It's true that the stock market is up. The stock market has been doing very well, but the market has been going up for years. The current bull market began under President Obama, but of course that doesn't stop Trump from taking personal credit for it. One thing Trump can't take credit for, however, is 401k accounts growing at record rates, because that is not happening. 401ks are doing pretty well these days on average. I am told, I'm not an expert on this, but according to my research, 401ks are doing pretty well. But they were doing a lot better when President Obama was in office. So because he's just as eager to pass blame as he is to steal credit, Trump has to find someone else to hold responsible for 401k accounts not growing as fast as he thinks they should be, thanks to his brilliant economic stewardship. And he's decided to blame you, or more specifically, those of you who have 401ks. The stock market is doing great, so if your 401k isn't doing as well as you'd like, it must be your fault. That's leadership we can believe in. And one more thing that Trump has taken credit for recently, and that is religious revival. The same day as he tweeted that tweet about the stock market and your 401ks, he also held a rally in Toledo, Ohio, where he said this.
The evangelicals called some of the greatest pastors, ministers, preachers, and they just called today 5 of the most respected people, and they said things that were incredible. They said there's never been anything like this in the church that they can some of them have been doing it for 30, 40 years. They said we have never seen enthusiasm like we see for this president and for this presidency, all of us, like we have right now.
So there you go. And by the way, thank you to Aaron Rupar for posting the video there on Twitter. He often follows Trump rallies and posts video of those. So thank you, Aaron, for providing that and for allowing me to swipe it for my live stream. We didn't talk, I just did it. So here's the thing about that. Unlike most of what Trump says, and certainly most of what he takes credit for, I believe him in this instance. I believe that right-wing fundamentalist Christians in America are more excited about Trump than any other president. I mentioned in a previous show, in fact, I believe in the previous edition of this live stream, the previous Facepalm 5, that I've seen people flying Trump flags, which I have never seen for any other president. So I live in a very conservative, very Christian area, and there is amazing enthusiasm for Trump in this area. And I understand why. He tells these people what they want to hear. He tells them that America is great, that they're great, that their problems are the fault of black people and other people of color and immigrants and LGBTQ people and any other marginalized group. It's all those people's fault. Whatever the problem is, it's all those people's fault. And he tells his supporters that they're just fine the way they are, and they don't have to change a thing, and anyone who says they do deserves only scorn and resentment and ridicule. And you know, some folks are baffled by why these supposedly pious Christians are so supportive of a man like Trump, who couldn't be less reverent or spiritual if he tried. But I'm not baffled by that. I get it completely, because the one thing right-wing fundamentalist Christians love more than Jesus is the scent of their own breath being blown back in their faces. And that's exactly what they get every time Trump opens his rotten mouth. Stay tuned in a minute for the post show, but for now, that's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, look after each other. Okay, welcome to the post show. I'm gonna try doing it this way from now on. I'm gonna do the 5, and get that out of the way and try to get that nice and tight. And then if people don't care about the post show and they just want to stop watching, they can stop watching. But they've got the Facepalm 5 out in front, so hopefully that part went okay. Now we can just hang out. Before we get too deep into the hangout, though, and I'll talk with everybody in the live chat and all that stuff, I want to acknowledge my newest $5 or more Patreon patrons, because I could not do this without them. So let me do some Patreon shout-outs real quick to start the post show. Shout-outs to these folks who are my newest patrons at a level of $5 per month or more, and their names are Layla V. Thank you, Layla. Nonstop Pop. Thank you, Nonstop Pop. Miss World, thank you, Miss World. Leo Baker, thank you, Leo Baker. Brophy Wolf, thank you, Brophy. John Cranny, thank you, John. TrekNut72, thank you, TrekNut72. And Adam Lefty Taylor, thank you, Adam. Thank you to everyone who is a patron of this channel at whatever level you are currently pledging. $5 a month or more gets you a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5, just like those folks. And a reminder that if you want to support this channel on Patreon, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives. And the Patreon shout out for $5 or more per month pledges is just one of the advantages that you can enjoy if you decide to do that. And I thank you very much. So now let's I turned to the live chat. The first thing I see is John Brockman saying, out is an adverb. The proper pluralization is shouts out. Okay, so there were the shouts out for the new patrons. I'm deeply, deeply embarrassed and sorry, and I don't. And Leto just told him to shut up, so I'm gonna defer to Leto Anor. And now she's telling John to go to his room. Hey, come on, it's his day off work. Please. Francois Lacombe says, when are you getting your silver play button from YouTube for reaching 100K subscribers? I don't know. I've talked to a couple of other people who I know who have crossed that threshold, and they say it took a little while to get theirs. So I'm not in any particular hurry to get mine. But as soon as I get it, I will be sure to show it off. I will make such a huge deal about it, and will be so full of myself you will not believe it. So yeah, but yeah, I have one coming. I just haven't got it yet. I noticed I got a super chat earlier from D Style Boxing for $2. It says, rarely comment, but always watch. Good work. Thank you very, very much for that. I really appreciate your generosity there. Super chats, of course, are always welcome. Never solicited, but always very, very welcome. So if anybody is feeling generous. Also, speaking of feeling generous, I want to go ahead and shout out the charity links in the description of the video. If you go to the video description of this live stream, there are links to GoFundMe's and PayPal accounts of several of our friends who are in need of a helping hand. And if you can afford a few bucks, whatever you can spare, would be greatly appreciated by them and by me. And if you can't spare it, if you just don't have the cash, but you still want to help out, then please consider sharing those links on your social media. And spreading the word and helping out that way. because that's very, very much appreciated too. So help our friends out if at all possible. So let me see what all we're talking about in the live chat. Eric Byer asks, was Joff at the rally today? Can stuffed sea lions carry AR-15s and body armor? I'm not in touch with Joff. I don't know exactly what Joff is doing at the moment, but it would, I don't know if he would have been there or not. Joff, I don't think he would have gone to a place where there may have been a risk of violence, because I think Joff is a coward. He may have gone. He may have been there, but if I had to guess, I would say Joff was not actually there. And yeah, could he carry an AR-15? I guess. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the animals and Steve and stuff, he can do most of the things that humans can do, and if there's anything that showing them doing would be really ridiculous. Like if you show a stuffed sea lion holding an assault rifle, like that would look kind of silly. So if I couldn't make that look good, then it would just happen off screen and you would just use your imagination. And Il Menharu Terrikson says, never forget the wise words of Toby B, meaning Toby Benson. There is more than one way to punch a Nazi. Absolutely. I believe, weren't those were the final words of the 2018 season, I think, wasn't it? That was Toby Benson's parting shot to Joff when he came to his house to let him know what he was going to do. And he's like, there's more than one way to punch a Nazi. Charles Smith says, thank you for bringing back the Whirlpool. You're welcome. I love doing the Whirlpool. I just got a super chat here from Louise Richardson. Thank you very much, Louise. I really appreciate your generosity. Andrew says, I adore the live chats. I'd love to be involved, but it's too late over here. Good night, everyone. And thanks to another. Oh, thank you very much, Andrew. You're probably asleep by now because I'm getting to the live chat a little late, but thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you enjoy the chats. Yeah, Lordship Mayhem. I always thought the D word for the nowhere near 1 million moms was democracy. Yes, indeed. They don't, for all of the protestations, against, like for free speech and all of the sort of things that these far right people complain about, they only seem to enjoy democracy when things go their way. Isn't that interesting? When things start going against their way, when there are popular movements rising up to elect progressive candidates or enshrine civil rights protections for groups they don't like, then all of a sudden democracy is this bad thing, right? Or when Burger King airs a commercial where one person says damn, then all of a sudden it's, oh, we have to stop this. 255 AD. And this is nice. This is a question about my granny. Question, your grandmother who died, was she the wife of the grandfather you talked about in that vid about the hunting lodge? Yes, she was. Yes, she was. Since 255 AD brought it up in their question, I thank you all so much for those of you who expressed condolences when I posted that video about my granny, or when I first broke the news on social media the day that I think it was either the day or the day after she died, when I posted on Twitter and Facebook, etc. about it. I got so many wonderful, beautiful messages of compassion and sympathy and condolence. So thank you all so much from myself and my family, my fellow grieving family members, for your thoughts, because we really, really appreciate it. I know I appreciated them greatly. And yes, Granny, who passed away, was the wife of Pap, who was the grandfather that I talked about in my video about the hunting lodge. That was Pap's wife. And you could not ask for two better grandparents than I got. I mean, it just, Pap and Granny were like a second set of parents to me. I feel so lucky to have had them in my life, because my mother, I have a good father and mother. Like I feel like I had pretty good parents, and then I got like an extra set of great parents along with it, because Pap and Granny were everything you could ever want. And yeah, and thank you for the question. Thank you for giving me an excuse to talk about her, because that makes it go a lot easier, when you can sort of tell stories about the person you lost and remember them. Here's a super chat from Aaron O'Connell. Thank you very much for your generosity. Did you hear about New York Times splitting their endorsement between Warren and Klobuchar? Thoughts? Rock on. Well, thank you. Yes, I did. I'm not sure how to feel about it. I mean, I'm still intending to vote for Warren in my state's primary. I don't have anything against Senator Klobuchar, but she would not be my choice. She's one of the candidates that has sort of stopped. She has stopped short of endorsing universal health care, a Medicare for all like proposal. Sanders and Warren have both endorsed that, and I feel like, especially in the primary, that's just got to be something that we get behind. Like, we can't be in the primary, especially. I am very, very reluctant to support Democrats or supposed progressive candidates who, during the primary, are making a point of telling us all the shit we can't do and of shortening the horizon. I just don't think I don't think it's a good electoral strategy, and it's not what I want to see from a potential leader. I want, especially in the primaries, I want to see people say, this is the goal, this is where we have to go, and God damn it, we're going to try our best to get there. And maybe in the act of trying to get there, we'll come up short, but the goal should not be to reduce the number of uninsured people or whatever. The goal should be universal health care. Healthcare is a human right that is accessible to everybody. And let's set that as the goal and say, let's aim for that, instead of this hedging of the bets immediately and saying, well, it's too expensive and it's too difficult to implement, so we're just going to do this half measure instead. Like Obamacare was the half measure. The Affordable Care Act was the half measure. We've done that already. Now it's time to go further, So I'm reluctant to support Senator Klobuchar because of stuff like that. But I think she would be, look, I would vote for any of them. If any of them are the nominee, I would vote for them, because the alternative is Trump. But I don't plan to vote for her for the nomination. Like I say, she seems fine, but yeah, it's Francois in the chat just said, aim for the stars, hit the moon. Exactly. L.S. Gregor asks, what Christian scholar decides which words are the damning ones? That's a great question. John Brockman says that was Jesus in Mind Your Business 1:1 and Shut the Fuck Up 3:13. Two of my favorite verses, honestly. 255 AD has another question here. Do the people staying at the Husky homeless shelter have to do chores to stay there? No, generally I don't think that they don't have to do chores to stay there. I think there's probably opportunities available if they want to volunteer to work at the shelter to do, but I don't think that they have to work at the shelter in order to stay. I think it's more of an all are welcome, as long as we have room, you can stay. Whatever your need may be, sort of thing. The deal with Joff in that episode where Stuffy and Millicent said you can stay, but you have to volunteer in the kitchen or whatever, that was sort of a way of disciplining Joff, because Joff had broken the rules. He had harassed a fellow resident, and they were telling Joff, you have to do this to prove to us that you can be trusted and that we are safe allowing you to stay. But I don't think the rules of the shelter are that people have to work there in order to stay. That seems contrary to the ethos on which the shelter is founded. John Brockman, go further equals revolution. Maybe, I don't know. I'm very reticent to embrace that. He says specifically a violent revolution with lots of pain and dying. Oh, I love John. Oh, yeah. And yeah, you know what, Phoenix, that's a good point. Maryland is a blue state. It goes to the Democrat anyway. So in a sense, it doesn't really matter who I vote for because the electoral votes are almost certainly going to the Democrat anyway, because Maryland is always a blue state. But, you know, I'm still going to vote for the Democrat. John Brockman says, will we ever see Joff again? Probably. Eventually. Probably not this year. I don't have any plans for Joff to come back in this coming season, but eventually he might come back. Yeah. I don't know if I don't have any specific idea of when or what the story would be, but yeah, he'll probably come back eventually. 255 AD says, I believe in universal housing. Would Stuffy support that, even though it'd make his shelter job obsolete? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Stuffy would support universal housing, even if it would make his shelter job obsolete. Stuffy is very selfless like that. Stuffy would not want to see a serious social problem continue just because his job depends on dealing with that social problem. DK Silo says, Star Trek Picard this week, excitement. That was not a question. No, but I am super, super excited for it. Actually, right before I came in and sat down to start the live stream, Ashley was watching something on TV, and we get our live TV through Sling, and sometimes Sling will play like the same commercial over and over again, like 3 or 4 or 5 times. That's one of the inspirations behind a bit in a Steve and Stuffy video last year, where me and Hans are like watching an online video and it just plays the same commercial over and over and over again. And we become obsessed with it. That's kind of what that is a riff on, because sometimes Sling will play you the same ad like 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row. Well, I was on my way from the kitchen into here to start the show, and I glanced at the TV in the living room where Ashley was watching, and her show was on a commercial, and it showed 3 or 4 different promos for Star Trek Picard. Instead of showing the same one over and over again, it went from one to another, showed 3 different ones. And if I wasn't hyped already, I'm hyped now. Like I'm so excited for Star Trek Picard. I'm super, super excited for Star Trek Picard. And my video on Wednesday is a Star Trek video, and it's a Picard video. It'll be technically, I'll call it a not actually Trek actually, even though it was scripted, because it's also part of a project that I have been invited to join with a bunch of other Star Trek YouTubers. Actually, Jesse Gender, whose work I have promoted in the past, and who I did a couple of voices for in a past video that she did. Got a bunch of us Star Trek YouTubers together to make videos about Captain Picard and certain scenes or episodes that mean a lot to us about Captain Picard, and it's called Captain Picard Day, and we are all releasing our videos at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on Wednesday to coincide with the debut of Star Trek Picard the next day. So I hope you like mine, and hopefully you'll like everybody else's. But yeah, that's going to be fun too. I'm super, super, super hyped for Star Trek Picard. Yeah, Matthew has a good point here. For those of you who don't know, a few of us are Maryland residents in addition to me. So there's a lot of inside knowledge about how Maryland politics works. And Matthew points out in the live chat that Maryland is actually a red state, but thankfully Baltimore and the D.C. suburbs have enough people to drag the state to the left. Boy, don't I know it. Western Maryland is Trump country through and through. Like I mentioned during the first part of the video, I mean, there are people on Sharpsburg Pike, which is the road that connects Hagerstown with Sharpsburg, where I actually live. On Sharpsburg Pike, you get about 3 or 4 miles out of town, and there's a stretch where there are 3 houses within about 100 yards of each other down the road that all fly Donald Trump flags. And have done for months. Like, it's not even an election year type of thing where, they fly the flag because they're Trump supporters and the election is coming up. No, they fly these Trump flags every day and have done for months on flagpoles, like proper flagpoles, not just hanging it off the front porch or something. And I have never seen that before. for any other presidential candidate or any other president. That has never happened before that I've seen in my life. Not for Reagan, not for either Bush, right? Never happened. So Trump is super popular in this part of the state. And I have often thought, we here in Western, and by the way, Western Maryland is also the poorest and the least educated part of the state of Maryland. So we are really propped up. We are really propped up and have been dragged into the future by the more progressive regions of the state. And Matthew is very on the money there. It is largely a red state that has been dragged to the left by more sensible people who live in certain regions and have enough population. I got another super chat I want to acknowledge from Ayelmar. Thank you very much once again for your generosity. And it says, better to aim for the stars and miss than to aim for the gutter and hit. Boy, ain't that the truth. Ferret Wizard says, love Bernie. Warren is my second choice. Steyer, who I never thought I would say I would ever like as he is a billionaire, also just started to watch Stephen Stuffy. It's pretty brilliant. Well, thank you so much. That's very nice of you to say. And yeah, Steyer is, look, it's not going to be Steyer. Like, I don't think he's even going to get close to the nomination. I have no plan to vote for him whatsoever. He's another one who is kind of a little bit too chicken shit when it comes to healthcare reform. I appreciate his willingness to foreground climate change in his candidacy. I think that's very important. And I wish that the other candidates would talk about climate change as much and as confidently and, make it as much of a major talking point as he does. So I appreciate that about Steyer's candidacy. But yeah, I would much rather vote for either Warren or Sanders, and I'm going to. Douglas Sharon says, who's your favorite Star Trek character? Oh, wow. My favorite character of all the probably Cisco. Either Cisco or Dr. McCoy. Those would be the two front runners. There are, but it's difficult to choose. I mean, there are a lot of characters that I love now that sort of just blended into the background when I was a kid. When I would watch the shows, or a teenager, when I would watch the shows as they were actually on the air. And now I look back as an adult, or I go back and I watch them afresh and I see like Worf. Worf is one of my very, very favorite characters in all of Star Trek now. And back when I was a kid, I liked Worf. Worf was good, but he wasn't like one of my favorite characters. But now Worf is one of my favorite characters. Jadzia Dax is one of my favorite characters. In Discovery, I absolutely adore Saru and Tilly. I think those are both two of my favorites. I mean, it's hard to pick. It's really hard to pick a favorite. But if I had to pick a favorite, gun to my head, it would probably be Sisko, Ben Sisko. John Brockman says, Jessie Gender has a Star Trek uniform. Does that make her a better Trekker than you? No, but I'll tell you what. On the Picard video that goes up on Wednesday, I didn't notice this until after I had already shot everything and put the camera away and I was editing it. Forgot to wear my Star Trek hat. I wore my son's cap like I'm wearing right now, and I've been trying to wear the Deep Space Nine hat that I got for the Star Trek videos, and I plumb forgot to do it. This is it right here. I've been trying to wear that one, and I just slipped my mind. So that might make her a better Trekkie than me, that I forgot to wear my own goddamn hat that I got for the sole purpose of wearing in Star Trek videos. Faye Queen Corey says, I have a question. Do you know the proper plural of cul-de-sac? I mean, my hick brain would say cul-de-sacs, but maybe it's culls-de-sac? I have no clue whatsoever. John says culls-de-sac, so that must be it, because John is the master of the plural. And John also points out Callie Wright speaks Klingon, and I do not. I have to use the dictionary. I have to translate. I have to use an app. I'll have to dial up Klingon on my Google Translate app on my phone so I can understand when people speak Klingon, because I am not a fluent Klingon speaker. I'm actually a monoglot. I took 2 foreign languages between all the years in college. I took 2 years, or the equivalent of 2 years. I took like compressed courses. The equivalent of 2 years of Spanish and 2 years of German. Cannot speak not either Spanish nor German for the life of me. I have absolutely no recall of it. I passed the classes somehow, but I have absolutely no. Oh, and in high school I took Latin. I took 3 years of Latin in high school. I'm completely lost when it comes to Latin. I do not. I'm. So good luck teaching me Klingon, because it's not going to happen. L.S. Gregor says Garrick is your favorite. Yeah, that Garrick is an amazing character. 255 AD says, I really loved your J.K. Rowling Whirlpool. I thought the "You're one of us now and everyone knows it" line poignant, because I'm sure she doesn't see herself like that. Yeah, but I mean, that to me is one of the most damning observations you could make for a character, for people like the people that Michael Worley is satirizing, or I'm satirizing as Michael Worley, to have that in common with J.K. Rowling, someone who I'm sure fancies herself as a very progressive, forward-thinking person. But her attitude toward trans people is utterly unacceptable. And for them, even hypothetically, to be able to look at her and say, oh, she's one of us, at least as far as that issue goes, that's very, very sad. And it should upset her if she were to be compared to people with that mindset, because you shouldn't want to be on the same team as those guys. William Wilson, who's your favorite Star Trek actor who was on both Babylon 5 and Star Trek? That narrows it down. Well, let's see, who was there? Well, there was Walter Koenig, right? Because he was Bester. There was who was? Let me see. I'm gonna have to look it up. Patricia Tallman. She was never like a regular character on Star Trek, but she was a stunt double, and like a guest star in some Star Trek stuff. So she might have to be on the list. And she was Lita. She was Lita Alexander on B5. Probably Walter Koenig. Francois Lacombe, what do you think about the Warren-Sanders feud? Honestly, it doesn't really concern me all that much. I still intend to vote for Elizabeth Warren, and if for whatever reason I can't vote for her, I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders. Like I am, in terms of their policy proposals and the sort of vision that they're laying out for what they would do as president, both of them are so far ahead of the other Democratic candidates that I'm going to vote for one of them in the primary, no matter what, basically. And I dearly, dearly hope that the nominee is one of them, because then I can vote for them in November with enthusiasm instead of voting for them just because that's the person that's the better option than Trump, So the feud doesn't really concern me all that much. We built this country, Spock or Data? That is a tough one. I'm going to have to say Spock, but that's a real tough one because I love Data. Data is such a terrific character, but if I have to pick one, I have to say Spock. DK Silo, did you watch The Expanse? I have not seen The Expanse, and I know a bunch of people have asked me about that for months, and I've always had to say I haven't seen it, so I apologize for not getting around to watching The Expanse yet, or to watching Legion yet. Plato, I haven't seen that yet either. Aaron O'Connell talking about favorite Trek characters says, I love Riker and Geordi. I wanted to be Geordi when I grew up. Not a creep who's cringeworthy, bad at interacting with people he's attracted to, but, like engineering. Yeah. Riker, Riker's one of my favorite characters, too. I'll show you the picture again. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, this was one of my wife's Christmas presents to me this year. And it is a photograph of, there it is. You can kind of see it without the glare. It is a photograph of Commander Riker, and it sits up on my desk, so it's always within my field of vision as I'm doing these live streams. And I think actually for my Trek videos from now on, when I'm shooting, I might actually relocate it to a spot behind me so you can see it a little bit more on camera when I'm doing the Star Trek videos, because I think it would be appropriate. So yes, obviously I have great love for Riker as well. And Anthony says, I came to this channel for Star Trek, never would have anticipated a show about stuffed animals becoming a cornerstone for why I stay. Well, thank you very. Stephen Stuffy is my favorite project. Stephen Stuffy is my favorite series. Those are my favorite videos that I do always. So thank you so much for enjoying Stephen. There we go. I had a little hiccup there. So let me know if the audio is out of sync now, because it just hiccuped on me there. If it is, I'll try something to see if I can get it back. But yeah, I love Stephen Stuffy. Stephen Stuffy are some of my favorite. They are my favorite videos that I do, and I'm working out the plot for the new Stephen Stuffy season now. There won't be a new Stephen Stuffy video until March, but I am working on what the stories will be, what the plots. I get ideas for Stephen Stuffy videos all the time, and when I get one, like, I rush to to my Google Doc where I keep all of my ideas, and I jot it down. I got an idea for one just today. We were watching an old episode of MacGyver, and and I thought, there was like a line that inspired me, and I thought, oh, that would be a great Stephen Stuffy plot, so I wrote it down. Also, I'm 99% sure there's going to be a story in this year's Halloween show that will be inspired by the Lighthouse. So can I assume by adjust the rabbit ears that yeah, okay, so it's out of sync. All right, let me try something here. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Is that any better at all? Let me know in the chat if that is any better, if that fixed the problem. I'm glad for the opportunity to test this out, because I wasn't sure if this would be the way to fix it when this did it fix? Oh, awesome, good. I'm so glad. So yeah, if it ever goes out of sync, just let me know in the chat, and all I have to do is end the live stream from my end and then restart it without ending it on YouTube, and that should work. So thank you all very much for bearing with me in that. I'm glad I'm back in sync. Let me see. Get some more. I'll just go to the end of the hour, and then we'll wrap it up. So we'll get a good solid hour in. Edge Q says, do you think there's any future in serial sci-fi not on subscription services? Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I would love to think that we're not going to be dependent on subscription services for all of our film or television like entertainment in the future. And yeah, I think that I feel like serialized storytelling in general, I think there should be a place for it on platforms other than like a Netflix thing. I don't see why not. 255 AD says, if you lived in a post-scarcity Trek-like world, do you think you'd still be doing what you do now? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I would still be doing what I do now. I might be more willing to take a more relaxed schedule than I have now. I might feel less pressure to put out as much content as I do if my livelihood and paying the bills wasn't dependent on it. But no, I think I would certainly still be doing what I do now, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 250, yeah, or some random geek. Exactly right. Steve would just make videos at a more relaxed pace. Exactly. Seal 0626. I really did switch it off and back on again. Kind of. Yeah, kind of. I ended the stream I stopped streaming from my encoder, and then I started streaming from my encoder again, and that seemed to have fixed it. So thank you. John Brockman, were Steve and Stuffy roommates in college? Did they ever get drunk and fool around? No. Stuffy and I were not roommates in college, but only because I lived at home when I went to college. And no, we have never gotten drunk and fooled around. Yeah, Christy. But hi, Christy, by the way. I didn't notice you until just now. Yeah, the superhero stuff on the CW has been serialized for a while now. The episodes of the various Arrowverse shows do flow very much from one to the other. There's a lot of serialization in those, definitely. Luke George says, do you watch the Arrowverse? I have not. I've watched a lot of it in the past. I haven't been keeping up with it this year. I did watch every episode of The Crisis crossover. I watched every single episode of Crisis on Infinite Earths and thought it was fantastic. I thought the fourth episode was maybe a little was not so great, but there was a lot of exposition and a lot of sort of table setting in it. But overall, in general, I thought the Crisis crossover was so much fun. It was such a thrill to see Brandon Routh get to play Superman again. And it was cool to see the little cameos from stars of different DC shows, and the unexpected cameo of the DCEU version of The Flash, which was very, very cool. Even though I am not a fan of those movies at all, I thought that scene was really, really well done and was a wonderful little surprise. So I'm in general, I am a big fan of the CW DC shows, and I am really, really, really looking forward to Superman and Lois. That got a series order. It was announced last week, I think. So my favorite Superman, Tyler Hoechlin, and Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois Lane, they're going to get their own show as Superman and Lois as part of the Arrowverse, and I can't tell you how excited I am for that. So yeah, for sure. 255 AD says, I'm reading Trekonomics. Some of the stuff the author says is outdated, like money didn't evolve from barter. It started as a way to pay armies. Okay, I mean, I didn't know that. So, but in general, I thought Trekonomics was a pretty good book. Of course, I know shit about economics, so I can't really critique it from an economics perspective because I don't have any expertise there. Progressive liberal, who would win a best 2 out of 3 Calto match between Spock and Tuvok? I got to go with Tuvok there because we never saw Spock play Calto. Spock played 3-dimensional chess with Kirk, but we never saw Spock play Calto. So, and Spock also played 3-dimensional chess in Discovery with Michael, but he didn't. I don't think we ever saw him play Calto, did we? So I would have to go with Tuvok because his Calto expertise has been established. We built this country says favorite scene on the ship, at least, is Data in command and Worf publicly undermining his authority. Data has to professionally check Worf in the ready room. The writing in that scene was like, that was a great scene. Never have I seen Commander Riker express dissatisfaction with his commanding officer in front of the crew as you just did. And then he says, after he gets done reading Worf the Riot Act, because he's Data and he's awesome, he says, I'm sorry if I have ended our friendship. Oh, what a great scene. What a great scene. And in the same vein, the scene from, was it part 2 of Reunion, where Data takes temporary command of another starship so they can cast the net to try and catch the cloaked Romulan ships coming through. And there's the guy who is Data's first officer on the ship who's like being a total asshole about an android being in charge of the ship. And Data kind of yells at him a couple times. Oh, what a great scene. I love when Data has to take charge. And he's like, listen, asshole, I'm the captain of this fucking... You're going to do what I say. Yeah. Great scenes. Great scenes. Stephen Deswan. First time tuning into one of your live streams. I love your Star Trek videos and have watched many multiple times. Thank you for the great content. Well, thank you very much, Stephen, for having the right name and for saying such nice things. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you have enjoyed my videos. Legends of Tomorrow is such a great show, LS. I love Legends of Tomorrow. It's so much fun. I wouldn't even call it a guilty pleasure. I would say it's just a pleasure. I love it so much. John Gingers, Tracy Scoggins. Yes, she was the Cardassian doctor who had the hots for O'Brien, right? Who thought that O'Brien was coming on to her because Cardassians flirt by like being jerks to each other. Yeah, and she was also in Babylon 5. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, John, I'm saying Spock would cow toe to Tuvok. That's exactly what I'm saying. Oh, Leto, is there a Superman in the new season of Titans? I didn't know that. I'll have to see if I can find some footage of that. I wasn't aware of that. That's cool. Yes, I would imagine Stuffy is an attentive and considerate lover, but I would not know. I would not know from personal experience, but just knowing him as I do, I would assume that he would be. Yes. 255 AD says, you arrive in 2567. You're told no money in the future. You just order free goods from the government owned 3D printers. What do you think of this future? I think it sounds pretty good. Zed Dreplin. I like that name because you switched the letters. Hey, Steve, would you consider yourself a true Trekkie or just a fan who appreciates a good quality sci-fi television? No, I would consider myself a true Trekkie because outside of Star Trek, my knowledge and interest in other sci-fi franchises is considerably less. Like, I love Star Trek. I really, 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 really like Star Wars, but I've only ever really been interested in like the movies and now The Mandalorian. I watched every episode of The Mandalorian. I thought it was terrific. But other than that, I haven't had a massive interest in like the Star Wars, what used to be called the expanded universe. I was never really into Star Wars comics or like the animated shows or anything like that. I've just never been into that or interested in that at all. But I love the Star Wars movies, the sort of mainline movies, and the spin-offs they've done recently, like Rogue One. But Solo was whatever. But Star Trek, I'm all about Star Trek, and I've watched everything I could watch, and I've read the comics, and I haven't read a lot of the novels, but when I was a kid, I read a lot of the novels. So I'm super Star Trek fan, definitely a Trekkie, not so much a general sci-fi fan. Like I watched Babylon 5 and really enjoyed it when it was on, but I haven't watched it for a while. Like I haven't gone back to it like I have Star Wars shows or Star Trek shows, excuse me, and. So no, I would definitely say I'm a Trekkie more than a general like sci-fi TV fan. Let me go through and answer a couple more questions real quick, and then we will wrap this up. Because I'm doing another live stream on Friday. I'm doing a proper Ask Away on Friday, so I can answer more questions then. 255 AD, doesn't Calto require hologram tech that didn't exist in the 23rd century? I think in the Discovery version of the 23rd century, you could definitely believe that some version of Calto would exist. In that version of the 23rd century, they seem to have a pretty advanced holographic technology, not holodeck level, not like solid, touchable, realistic holographic projections like that are solid, but I'm sure they could have something that you could play Calto with. If we're going Spock from the classic series, Spock, like classic Trek era Spock, then yes, Tuvok does have about 100 years on him. Some random geek says promote social justice alchemy. Hey everybody, watch Social Justice Alchemy. The link is in the chat right there from Some Random Geek. That is a show starring Some Random Geek and John Brockman, Tom McDonald, Jamie J, Phoenix, and Leto Anner, all wonderful, wonderful people. And they do their show at 7 p.m. Universal Time, 2 p.m. Eastern every Saturday. And the link to the channel is in the live chat. So check out Social Justice Alchemy every Saturday. There you go. Marty Abernathy, will there ever be an Ensign's Log, Steve and Stuffy crossover? I don't think we ever will do one of those, but there was a fan theory that somebody posted, I think either as a comment on a Steve and Stuffy video or a comment on an Ensign's Log. I can't remember which one, where they laid out this fan theory of how it could all fit together, and it was really funny and really clever. Oh, Leto, it's Superboy, not Superman. Well, same thing. Same thing. All right. I'm going to wrap this up, everybody. So thank you all so much for being with me. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this version of the Facepalm 5 live stream is a little more acceptable to you. I know a lot of people were not thrilled with the first edition, both because there was a technical issue where the audio went super out of sync, and also because they just felt it was a little too long and rambly. So I think this felt pretty good. So from now on, I think I'm going to do it like I did it today, where we'll do the Facepalm 5 bit up front, and it'll be relatively tight and disciplined, and then we'll do a more unstructured post show where I can hang out with everybody in the chat. So thank you all so much for watching. Reminder about the charity links. Go to the description of this video and check out the charity links. For some of our friends who are in need of a helping hand, you can donate to their crowdfunding campaigns or directly to them via PayPal. The links are in the description of this video. Please help them out if you possibly can. And if you can't afford to donate money to them, because I know a lot of people are in situations where they can't spare even a couple of dollars, please don't feel bad about that. And if you want to still help them out, share the links on your social media and spread the word so maybe some other folks can donate to them instead. So thank you all so much for your generosity there. Also, I mentioned the podcasts already. If you like especially if you like my Star Trek themed stuff, you can listen to the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I co-host with the brilliant Jason Harding called The Ensign's Log. And you can also listen to the movie review podcast that Jason and I co-host. They're both parts of the Let Me Listen podcast family. You can listen to them at letmelistenpodcasts.com or on SoundCloud, or subscribe via RSS using your favorite podcast app. You can do all of those through links that are also in the description, that are just right below the charity links that I already mentioned. My Patreon, once again, is patreon.com/Steve Shives. I could not do this without the support of my wonderful Patreon patrons. So thanks to all of you for pledging, however much you are pledging and however long you have been pledging. And to those of you who could afford it and think I'm worth it and are considering supporting this channel through Patreon, there's where you go. Patreon.com/Steve Shives. I also want to remind you of the music that you heard at the beginning of the show, and once or twice accidentally when I forgot to turn it off, is the song Proto Funk by the wonderful Kevin MacLeod, who makes awesome royalty-free music. Proto Funk by Kevin MacLeod. You can visit incompetech.com to listen and find more of Kevin's awesome music. Credit where credit is due and richly deserved, and also legally required as per the Creative Commons license. Thank you, Kevin, so much for your wonderful music. And thank you all for watching. I will see you this Friday for a new Ask Away live stream. And then I'll see you 2 weeks from today for another edition of the Facepalm 5 Live. So thank you all for watching, and take care, everybody. I'll see you next time.